The first alien ship arrived on a Tuesday morning in the year 2087. It came down slowly through the clouds above New York City, and the whole world watched on their screens. People cried. People prayed. People held their children close and wondered if this was the end or the beginning of something new. It was neither. The aliens called themselves the Mendari. They were tall and thin, with silver skin and eyes like black glass. They spoke through machines that turned their clicks and whistles into English. They said they came in peace. They said they represented something called the Galactic Council, a group of 12 species that ruled the known galaxy. Commander Daniel Hayes was 32 years old when the Mendari landed. He stood in the crowd behind the security barriers and watched as world leaders shook hands with beings from another star. He remembered feeling small. He remembered feeling afraid. But more than anything, he remembered feeling angry. Because the Mendari looked at humans the way a person might look at insects. In the weeks that followed, the Council sent scientists to study Earth. They took samples of soil and water. They scanned human bodies and human cities. They asked questions about human history and human wars, and when they were done, they held a meeting with the leaders of every nation. Daniel was not important enough to attend that meeting, but he heard what happened. Everyone heard. The Council had decided that humanity was primitive. They had no faster-than-light travel. They had no energy shields. They had no weapons that could threaten even the smallest Council ship. Earth was given what the aliens called observer status. It meant that humans could watch the galaxy, but they could not participate. They could not vote. They could not trade. They could not travel beyond their own solar system. They were, in the politest possible terms, being told to sit down and be quiet. Most people accepted this. What choice did they have? The Council controlled thousands of star systems. They had fleets of warships that could turn Earth into dust. Humanity had nuclear weapons and space stations that could barely reach Mars. Fighting was not an option. But Daniel Hayes did not accept it. And he was not alone. In the year 2094, Daniel was recruited into a program that did not officially exist. It was called the Prometheus Initiative, and it operated from underground facilities in 12 countries. The woman who ran it was a scientist named Dr. Katie Morgan. She was 50 years old, with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through people. The Council thinks we are stupid, Katie told Daniel on his first day. They think we are children playing with rocks while they build castles. They are wrong. She showed him what the initiative had been doing since first contact. They had been listening. Every alien transmission, every communication between Council ships, every classified military frequency, humans had been recording all of it. They had built hidden satellites that looked like space junk. They had placed listening devices on every alien vessel that visited Earth. They had learned the Council's languages, their codes, their secrets, and they had begun to build. Daniel spent the next 40 years of his life working for the initiative. He watched as human scientists took apart alien technology piece by piece. He saw them fail 1,000 times before they succeeded once. He saw young engineers grow old trying to understand power sources that should have been impossible. And slowly, year by year, humanity began to catch up. They built their first energy shield in 2112. It was weak and unstable, but it worked. They built their first faster-than-light engine in 2131. It exploded on the test flight and killed 11 people. But the second one worked perfectly. They built their first warship in 2156. It was ugly and slow compared to Council vessels, but it was theirs, and no one knew. This was the hardest part. The Council sent inspectors to Earth every few years. They scanned the planet and checked for signs of advanced technology. Every time they came, the initiative hid everything. The shipyards were buried deep inside the moon. The research facilities were miles underground. The test flights happened in the empty space beyond Neptune, where no one was watching. Humanity smiled at the inspectors. They showed them farms and factories and schools. They played the role of the primitive species perfectly. Why don't we show them? Daniel asked Katie one night. They were old now. Both of them. Daniel's hair was white, and Katie needed a cane to walk, but their minds were still sharp, and their anger had never faded. Because we are not ready, Katie said. When we reveal ourselves, we must be strong enough that no one can ever threaten us again. Not strong enough to fight, strong enough to win. Daniel nodded. He understood. The Council had thousands of years of experience. They had weapons that could crack planets and shields that could stop asteroids. If humanity showed their hand too early, they would be destroyed before they could defend themselves. So they waited. The years passed. Daniel trained young officers who would one day command the Hidden Fleet. Katie trained young scientists who would one day build even better ships. They watched as generation after generation dedicated their lives to a secret that could never be shared. And the galaxy forgot about Earth entirely. The Council stopped sending inspectors after 2200. There was no point. The humans were clearly not a threat. They had made no progress in 100 years. They were still flying chemical rockets and arguing about borders. They were exactly what the Council had always said they were. A primitive species on a small planet at the edge of nowhere. Daniel Hayes died in 2241 at the age of 186. Medical technology had advanced far beyond what the Council knew. He lived long enough to see the fleet grow to 3,000 ships. He lived long enough to see weapons that could tear through Council shields like paper. He lived long enough to know that humanity was finally ready. Katie Morgan spoke at his funeral. Only a few hundred people attended, all of them members of the initiative. To the rest of the world, Daniel had been a retired military officer who lived a quiet life. He gave everything for this, Katie said, her voice steady despite her age. He gave his life so that our children and their children would never have to bow to anyone. The galaxy thinks we are weak. The galaxy thinks we are afraid. One day, they will learn the truth. She looked up at the sky, at the stars that humanity had been watching for so long, and on that day, they will remember the name Earth. The funeral ended. The mourners returned to their hidden bases and their secret work. The fleet continued to grow in the darkness beneath the moon's surface, and Earth stayed quiet, waiting for the moment when silence would no longer be enough. The Galactic Council met once every standard year, in the Great Chamber on Velen Prime. The room was enormous, built to hold representatives from 12 different species. The ceiling was made of glass that showed the stars above, a reminder of the vast empire they controlled together. High Sovereign Kethral of the Velthari Empire sat in the largest chair. His species had always been the most powerful on the council. They were reptilian, with scales the color of dried blood and eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. The Velthari controlled more territory than any other species. They had the biggest fleet. They had the most weapons. And they were always hungry for more. "We need new resources," Kethral announced to the chamber. His voice was deep and cold, like stones grinding together. "The outer colonies are running low on fuel. The mining operations in the Theta sector have failed. We must expand." Bun. The other council members shifted in their seats. They had heard this before. The Velthari were always expanding, always taking, always growing. But no one dared to argue with them. The last species that had tried was now extinct. "Where do you suggest?" asked Councillor Yithra of the Mendari. She was tall and silver, with the same black eyes that her ancestors had shown to humanity 200 years ago. Kethral's advisor stepped forward and activated a holographic map. The galaxy spread out before them, millions of stars and thousands of claimed systems. His clawed finger pointed to a small yellow star at the edge of the map. "Here," he said. "The Sol system. The humans." Yithra frowned. "The primitives? They have nothing of value. Their planet does," the advisor replied. "Rich in metals, clean water, fertile soil. And the humans themselves are numerous. They would make excellent workers for our mining colonies. They are under council protection," another member said. "We granted them observer status." "Oh no." Kethral laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Observer status means nothing. They are not members of the council. They have no allies. No one will miss them." The debate continued for several hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Velthari wanted Earth, and the Velthari always got what they wanted. When the vote was called, 11 species voted in favor of what they called peaceful annexation. 1 species abstained. But abstaining was not the same as opposing. The doors to the chamber opened, and a human walked in. His name was Ryan Cole, and he had been Earth's ambassador to the Council for 15 years. He was 60 years old, with brown hair that was starting to turn gray, and eyes that showed nothing of what he was feeling. He had learned long ago that showing emotion in front of aliens was a weakness. "Ambassador Cole," Kethril said, his yellow eyes gleaming. "How good of you to join us. We have news." Ryan walked to the center of the chamber and stood alone, surrounded by species that could destroy his world without effort. He kept his hands clasped behind his back, and his expression calm. "I am listening," he said. Kethril explained the Council's decision. Earth would be annexed by the Velthari Empire. The human population would be relocated to designated habitation zones on other worlds. Earth's resources would be harvested for the benefit of the galactic community. This was not a negotiation. This was not a request. This was simply what was going to happen. "You should be honored," Kethril finished. "Your species will finally be useful." The chamber was silent. Every eye was on Ryan, waiting to see how the primitive human would react. Would he cry? Would he beg? Would he fall to his knees and plead for mercy? Ryan smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible. But it was there, and something about it made Kethral's scales itch. "And if we refuse?" Ryan asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. No species had ever refused the Council. No species had ever been stupid enough to try. "Then you will be removed," Kethral said slowly. "Your cities will be destroyed. Your population will be scattered across 100 worlds as slaves. Your planet will be stripped bare and left as a dead rock. You have 30 of your Earth days to prepare for our arrival. Use them wisely." End quote. Ryan nodded. His smile did not fade. "I understand," he said. "I will deliver your message to my people." He turned and walked toward the door. His footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. Every council member watched him go, wondering why he did not seem afraid. At the door, Ryan paused. He looked back over his shoulder at the 12 species that ruled the galaxy. "Thank you for this opportunity," he said. "We have been waiting a very long time." Then he was gone. Kethral stared at the empty doorway for a long moment. There was something wrong. Something he could not identify. The human had acted like a person who knew something that no one else knew. Like a person who was playing a game that only he understood. "Should we be concerned?" Yithra asked. Kethral shook his head. "They are primitives. They have nothing. In 30 days, the Sol system will belong to us." But as the council session ended and the representatives returned to their ships, Kethral could not shake the feeling that he had just made a terrible mistake. Ryan Cole walked through the corridors of the council station toward the human embassy. His heart was beating fast, but his face remained calm. He had trained for this moment his entire life. Every ambassador before him had trained for this moment. They had all known it would come eventually. He entered his private office and locked the door behind him. Then he opened a hidden panel in his desk and activated a communication device that the council did not know existed. It connected to a network of secret satellites that stretched all the way back to Earth. A face appeared on the screen. It was Admiral Nathan Price, commander of the Earth Combined Fleet. He was a young man, only 45, but his eyes were old. He had spent his whole life preparing for a war he hoped would never come. "Ambassador," Nathan said. "What happened?" "They voted for annexation," Ryan replied. "The Velthari are coming. 30 days. Nathan's jaw tightened. "How many ships?" "How many ships?" "I don't know yet, but Kethral wants this personally. He'll send enough to make a statement." There was a long pause. Ryan could see Nathan thinking, calculating, planning. Behind him, through a window, Ryan could see the stars. Somewhere out there, hidden in the darkness, 3,000 human warships were waiting. "Crimson Protocol?" Nathan asked. Ryan took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that Daniel Hayes and Katie Morgan, and thousands of others had spent 300 years preparing for. Crimson Protocol, Ryan confirmed. Nathan nodded. His face was grim but determined. We'll be ready, he said. When they arrive, they'll find out exactly what humanity has been doing all these years. The communication ended. Ryan sat alone in his office, surrounded by the silence of space. In 30 days, everything would change. In 30 days, the galaxy would learn that Earth had never been quiet at all. They had just been waiting for the right moment to speak. Admiral Zeth Vor stood on the command deck of the Eternal Dominion and watched the stars streak past. His flagship was the pride of the Velthari Empire, a warship so large that it could hold a small city inside its hull. Behind him, 400 more vessels followed in perfect formation. It was the largest fleet the Velthari had assembled in 200 years, and it was all for one small planet called Earth. Zeth Vor thought it was excessive. He had seen the reports on humans. They had no warships, they had no defense platforms, they had nothing but chemical rockets and primitive satellites. Sending 400 ships to conquer them was like sending an army to crush an anthill. But High Sovereign Kethril wanted to make a statement. He wanted the galaxy to see what happened to species that dared to refuse the Council. So here they were, crossing the empty space toward a world that could not possibly fight back. Admiral, his second officer called, we are entering the Sol system. We will reach the human homeworld in 6 hours. Zeth Vor nodded. Any signs of resistance? The officer checked his screens. None, Admiral. Their orbital space is completely empty. No weapons. No ships. Nothing. They have accepted their fate, Zeth Vor said with satisfaction. Perhaps they are not as stupid as we thought. The fleet moved deeper into the system. They passed the outer planets, balls of gas and ice that spun slowly in the darkness. They passed a ring of rocks and debris that the humans called the asteroid belt. They passed a red planet that the humans had tried and failed to colonize. Everything was quiet. Everything was still. Zeth Vor began to feel bored. He had hoped for some excitement, some small resistance that would give his gunners something to shoot at. But the humans were offering nothing. They were simply waiting to be conquered. Admiral, his officer said suddenly. His voice sounded strange. We are approaching the human moon. I am detecting something. Zeth Vor leaned forward. What do you mean, something? Before the officer could answer, every alarm on every ship in the fleet began to scream at once. The moon's surface was opening. Zeth Vor stared at the screens in disbelief. The gray dust that covered the moon was falling away, revealing massive metal doors that stretched for miles in every direction. The doors slid apart slowly, and from the darkness beneath them, lights began to appear. Thousands of lights. Ships began to rise from the moon's surface. They were large, much larger than the reports had said humans could build. They were sleek and black, with sharp angles and glowing engines. They moved in perfect formation, spreading out across space like a net being cast across water. Zeth Vor counted them. 100, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. 3,000 warships, each one bristling with weapons that should not exist. That's impossible, his officer whispered. The scans said they had nothing. The reports said, things are for watching. Thanks for watching. The reports were wrong. Zeth Vor cut him off. His scales had gone pale. His hearts were beating too fast. Raise shields. Charge weapons. All ships. Battle formation. The Velthari fleet scrambled to respond. They were trained soldiers, veterans of 100 campaigns. But they had come expecting to fight farmers and children. They had not expected this. A human voice crackled over the communication channel. It was calm and clear, without any trace of fear. Admiral Zeth Vor, this is Admiral Nathan Price of the Earth Combined Fleet. You were warned. Earth's answer is no. Zeth Vor grabbed the communication controls. You cannot win this fight, human. You may have hidden ships, but our technology is superior. Our experience is superior. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. There was a pause. Then Nathan Price spoke again. I don't think you understand your situation, Admiral. Let me explain it to you. The human fleet moved. It was fast, faster than Zethvor had ever seen ships move. They crossed the distance between the moon and the Velthari formation in seconds, surrounding the 400 vessels like wolves surrounding sheep. For 300 years, Nathan continued, we have been listening to your communications. We have studied your tactics. We have analyzed your weapons. We have learned every weakness in your shields, every flaw in your engines, every gap in your armor. You thought you were coming to conquer primitives. You were wrong. Zethvor's claws tightened on his command chair. Fire, he ordered. All ships, fire everything. The Velthari fleet unleashed its weapons. Plasma bolts and energy beams and missiles streaked toward the human ships. It was enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. It was enough to burn continents to ash. The human shields absorbed it all without flickering. Our turn, Nathan said. The human ships fired. Zethvor had never seen weapons like these. They were beams of pure white light that cut through Velthari shields, like they were made of paper. They struck hulls and tore them apart. They hit engines and turned them into fireballs. Ship after ship exploded, filling space with debris and flame. The Eternal Dominion shook as something struck its side. Alarms screamed. Officers shouted. Zethvor saw his second officer thrown across the deck as an explosion ripped through the wall. Return fire, Zethvor screamed. Target their command ship. But the human command ship was already moving, dancing between the Velthari vessels with impossible grace. It fired again and again, and each shot found its target. On the bridge of the ECS Defiance, Admiral Nathan Price watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. His crew worked around him with silent efficiency. There was no panic. There was no fear. They had trained for this moment since they were children. Enemy flagship is damaged, his weapons officer reported. Shields at 12%, engines at 30%. Nathan nodded. Focus fire. End this. The Defiance and 6 other ships turned their weapons on the Eternal Dominion. The great Velthari flagship, pride of the Empire, died in a storm of white light. Admiral Zethvor never even had time to scream. The battle lasted 11 minutes from the first shot to the last. When it was over, 400 Velthari warships had been reduced to burning wreckage. The human fleet had lost none. Not a single ship, not a single life. Nathan Price looked at the destruction on his screens. He felt no joy. He felt no triumph. He only felt tired. This was not a victory to celebrate. It was a message that had to be sent. He opened a communication channel to every frequency in the galaxy. He knew the Council would be listening. He knew every species in every system would hear what he said next. This is Admiral Nathan Price of Earth. Today, the Velthari Empire sent 400 warships to conquer our world. Those ships are now destroyed. Every crew member is dead. This was not our choice. We asked only to be left alone. He paused, letting the words sink in. Earth does not seek war. We do not seek conquest. But we will not be slaves. We will not be relocated. We will not bow to any council or any empire. If you come to us in peace, we will welcome you. If you come to us with weapons, you will meet the same fate as the Velthari fleet. He ended the transmission and leaned back in his chair. Behind him, his crew was silent. They all understood what had just happened. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. The secret was out. The waiting was over, and humanity was finally ready to face whatever came next. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every species on every world had heard what happened in the Sol system. The mighty Velthari fleet, 400 of their best warships, had been completely destroyed. Not defeated, not damaged, destroyed. And the humans had not lost a single ship. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Representatives rushed to Velon Prime from across the galaxy, their ships pushing their engines to the breaking point. No one wanted to miss this. No one could believe what they had heard. The great chamber was full when High Sovereign Kethral arrived. His scales had lost their color. His eyes had lost their glow. He looked like a person who had just watched his entire world fall apart. Because in many ways, Admiral Zeth-Vor had been more than just a military commander. He had been Kethral's oldest friend, his most trusted advisor. They had grown up together. They had conquered worlds together. And now Zeth-Vor was dead, along with 60,000 Velthari soldiers, scattered across space as frozen debris. How did this happen? Counselor Yithra demanded. Her silver face was twisted with confusion and fear. Our scans showed they had nothing. Our scientists said they were primitives. How could they have built a fleet like that without us knowing? They cheated, Kethral growled. They lied. They hid their true strength and pretended to be weak. Is that not exactly what we would have done? Asked another counselor quietly. Kethral turned on him with fury in his eyes. But before he could speak, the chamber doors opened. Ambassador Ryan Cole walked in. He was alone. No guards, no weapons, no protection of any kind. He walked across the floor with the same calm expression he had worn 30 days ago when the council had voted to take his world. The only difference was a small smile at the corner of his mouth. You were not invited to this session. Kethral snarled. Leave now, or I will have you executed. No. Ryan stopped in the center of the chamber and looked up at the High Sovereign. With what army? He asked simply. The words hung in the air. Kethral's claws dug into the arms of his chair. Every other council member held their breath. The Velthari Empire has 47 colony worlds, Ryan continued. As of this moment, those worlds have no defense. Your fleet was the largest you had. Your best ships, your best commanders. They are all gone now. What will you do if someone decides to take advantage of your weakness? Kethral said nothing. There was nothing to say. The human was right. Ryan turned slowly, looking at each council member in turn. For 300 years, you dismissed us. You called us primitives. You treated us like animals in a zoo. Interesting enough to study, but not important enough to respect. You measured our worth by our willingness to show our strength. You assumed that silence meant weakness. He paused. You were wrong. Counselor Yithra leaned forward. What do you want? Territory? A seat on the council? Name your price, and we can negotiate. Ryan shook his head. We want nothing from you. We never wanted anything from you. We only wanted to be left alone. That is still all we want. Then why are you here? Another counselor asked. To deliver a message. Ryan's voice hardened. Earth has no interest in your politics. We do not want to join your council. We do not want to trade with your empires. We do not want alliances or treaties or partnerships. We want to live on our world in peace. He took a step closer to Kethral. But if any species, any council, any empire ever threatens Earth again, we will not stop at 11 minutes. We will not be satisfied with destroying one fleet. We have been watching you for 300 years. We know every secret, every supply route, every weakness. We know things about your own governments that you have forgotten. Kethral's scales rippled with barely controlled rage. You dare threaten us? You are one planet. We are 12 empires. If we unite against you, then you will lose, Ryan interrupted. All of you. Together. You have seen what 3,000 of our ships can do. We have more. Many more. And we have had 300 years to study your tactics, your strategies, your weapons. We know how you think. We know how you fight. You know nothing about us. The chamber was completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Ryan's expression softened slightly. But we do not want war. We never wanted war. We built our fleet to protect ourselves, not to conquer others. So here is what I propose. Leave us alone. Do not send ships to our system. Do not send diplomats to our world. Do not contact us unless we contact you first. In return, we will not interfere with your empires. We will not take your territory. We will not seek revenge for the attack on our world. He looked directly at Kethral. The Velthari have lost their fleet. Their colonies are undefended. By the laws of this council, Any species could claim those worlds now. We could take them. Easily. But we will not. That is not who we are. Kethril stared at him with hatred burning in his yellow eyes. But there was something else there too. Something that looked almost like respect. Why? Kethril asked. Why would you show mercy to those who tried to enslave you? Ryan considered the question for a moment. Because strength is not about what you can destroy. It is about what you choose to protect. We protect our people. We protect our world. We do not need to prove our power by crushing those who cannot fight back. The Velthari are no longer a threat to us. That is enough. He turned to leave. One more thing, he said over his shoulder. If any of you are thinking about testing our defenses, about finding our weaknesses, about building a coalition to challenge us, I suggest you reconsider. We will know. We always know. And we will not give another warning. Ambassador Ryan Cole walked out of the chamber. His footsteps echoed in the silence until the doors closed behind him. The council sat in stunned quiet for a long time. Finally, Councillor Yithra spoke. What do we do now? No one had an answer. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed. The Velthari Empire, without its fleet, began to crumble. Rebellions broke out on colony worlds that had been held by force for centuries. Other species sensed weakness and began making claims on Velthari territory. Kethril tried to hold his empire together, but it was like trying to hold water in his claws. The more he squeezed, the more slipped away. Earth received hundreds of messages from other species. Some were apologies, some were requests for alliance, some were trade proposals, some were barely hidden threats, testing whether the humans meant what they said. The humans ignored them all. They had said what they wanted. They wanted to be left alone. And for the first time in 300 years, the galaxy was ready to listen.